Uh, I come from Los Angeles, which is how I got involved in film. But I come from a little small town, Hermosa Beach, in Los Angeles. And it was a lot like Klamath. I grew up with a bunch of people. We all knew each other. We went from third grade all the way through high school until we left for college together. And that was during the Vietnam era. And so some of my friends went to Vietnam, and 3 of them did not come back. And I feel that the least I can be doing is trying to draw attention to veterans' issues, to and certainly to people in this region who have made the ultimate sacrifice so I could stand up here and be doing this with you today. That being said, I think we'll get right to the panel. So I'd like to start bringing people up. First, we have Wayne Sweat, who is representing the Army and also happens to be the vice chair of Klamath Film. We have Sarah Callan, representing the Marines. We have Spencer Martin. Master Sergeant.
Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Major. See, I told you I was never in.
Yeah.
And Eric Levesque. I will get this one right, Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes, that was easy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do before we get started on this is we're going to follow the same thing that happens in the film. And we're going to start off. I asked everybody, and I'm going to ask you to participate in this as well. I asked everybody in the film how you got in the service in the first place. All yours.
I guess I'm supposed to ask the questions to them as well. So Wayne, we're going to start with you down there. How did it come about that you ended up in the United States Army?
Fate.
Explain that a little bit.
My dad was a veteran. He served in the Air Force for 22 years. The aircraft cargo plane mechanic. My grandfather was actually in the English Navy, deep sea diver, you know, the big bell helmet, disarming mines, so they didn't blow up ships. So it seemed inevitable that I was going to serve in one capacity or another. It's my mom and dad commented many times that they wanted me to go in the Air Force like my dad. But although their friend was the Air Force recruiter here in town, he never talked to me, and the Army recruiter did. And
so let me ask you this: were you living in Klamath Falls at the time?
Yes, yeah. We traveled. My dad being in the Air Force, we traveled all over the world. But they decided to retire here. They had a friend that had been stationed here at Kingsley Field, and just absolutely loved the place. And we came out in a pop-up camper from Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and they looked around, fell in love with the place, bought a house, lived in that camper for 3 months while I was going to school until the house closed. But yeah, I went to school here, moved away, you know, went in the Army, went about, moved back here, got talked into moving back here, moved away again for work and back, and it's just been like a revolving door. But, yeah, it's funny. My mom and dad were having some construction on the house when I was in high school, right before I went in. And my mom said, if you don't know what you want to do when you get out of the military, she said, be an electrician. You'll be a millionaire by the time you're 30. I second week, I think it was, of basic training, I was called, me and another fellow were called out of formation and told to go report to the day room. And there were a couple of officers there, and they were from West Point, and offered me an opportunity to go to West Point. Well, silly me, I still had it in my mind what my mom had told me, that I should be an electrician. I'll be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. So they told me it was going to be an 8-year commitment, and I passed because, that means it's longer before I get to be a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbass. Excuse me. Then a week later, I got called out of formation again. Some gentlemen from Officers Candidate School. And for those that don't know, OCS is where somebody that's commissioned, enlisted, or somebody that's an enlisted service member like myself would go to an additional training for 90 days, like an additional boot camp, and then they turn you out in 90 days as an officer. And so I was offered that. Still, I'm going with mom's advice. No, be an electrician, be a millionaire by the time you're 30. For somebody that's so supposedly so smart, I've made some dumb moves. Anyhow.
But you made it through. All right, Sarah, how did you come about becoming a United States Marine?
I feel like I was kind of a little bit born into it. My dad was law enforcement. My grandpa did 24 and a half years in the Marine Corps and was a master gunnery sergeant and drill instructor. So I was kind of raised by the Marine Corps to start out with. But actually signing up, I was in Roseville outside of Sacramento, California, and I was fighting professionally. I was at an MMA gym. We were the first year strike force. And I was the only girl, a lot like the Marine Corps. And so I used to come in, after school to go to the ring and go fight. And it was right next door to the recruiter's office. And so on their lunch breaks, the recruiters would all come in and place bets because they thought it was hilarious that a girl came in a cheer skirt and was fighting all the boys. And so they would place bets to see if, the little prom queen can make the boys bleed. and and so back then, this was before, the UFC days and back before women were fighting. And there wasn't many women in mixed martial arts at the time. And so there wasn't really a future in that unless you wanted to be a ring girl. That's pretty much the only way you're going to make money in that world. And so, they used to come in all the time and, joke and place bets. And finally they came up to me one day and were like, "Hey, you want to actually get paid to fight?" "Why, yes, sir, I do. I'll take it." And, for me, there was never a question about what branch I was going to join. It was, go big or go home, go all the way. I want the hardest. I want the toughest. I want to do, everything that the guys are doing. And my grandpa was so mad at me and begged me to join the Air Force. The Marine Corps is not a place for women. This is an old boys club. If you aren't anybody passably cute, you should not join the Marine Corps. And, I was that little punk rock Rick James, I do what I want kid. And so I went anyway. And when I went to boot camp, I tried to write him a letter. You try and write your family letters. And because he was a drill instructor, the only letter I ever got back from him said, "You are a lower than life, scum on the bottom of my shoe recruit that does not rate to speak to senior drill instructor, master gunnery sergeant Callan. Call me when you're a Marine." And
Oh, wow.
and so when I did graduate, because he was an E9, he did get to sit, front and center and get recognized. And it was the greatest day of his life because he only had 3 granddaughters and he never thought he was going to get a Marine. And so my biggest compliment was, "Well, I guess girls aren't so bad after all." I got my Marine.
Nice. Excellent. All right, Spencer, it's your turn.
Well, I actually joined the military twice. Once was the Marine Corps, and the other was the Army National Guard. So Marine Corps. I think early on I was brainwashed by comic books. I grew up just devouring, Sergeant Rock, Sergeant Fury, The Unknown Soldier, you name it, I had to have it. And I was, and that it was like, I don't know why, maybe, my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II, and I'd happened upon his, his sea chest at one point with all of his uniforms and stuff. And, maybe that's what got it started. But I knew from the time I was probably in the first or second grade that the military was in my future. Not to say that it was every single day, because Lord knows I tried really hard to do bad things that would preclude me from being in the military. But it culminated, of course, in high school, and throughout my school years, every report, just about everything that I did research on had something to do with the military, and so I was predisposed, I guess. So I was courted by the Navy by a guy named Joe Milstead here in town. This is probably started about '84, and Joe was a Navy SEAL, Vietnam era guy, and he was tough, gruff as nails, great guy, and chain smoked in his office as he was talking to you. Anyway, Joe had me pretty much convinced that I was going to be on a nuclear submarine. My scores were good, and I was going to go be on this nuclear submarine. And I all but signed the papers, and then this charismatic A4 avionics guy named Dave Hovey, Sergeant Dave Hovey, happened upon me and a couple of my buddies, and he ended up enlisting my two friends, and I was intrigued, and I hadn't signed anything with Joe. And Dave was relentless. Sergeant Hovey was relentless. He would call me nonstop. And so my parents had left town, and I was having a party at their house that I lived in. And he called me about 3 times, and I finally said, look, if you just stop calling me for a few days, I will bring my parents in, we'll get together, and we'll get this thing done. And it wasn't as easy as I thought. My dad was he was outspoken against the war in Vietnam, and he was, he's a good man. And I didn't realize that, how strongly he felt about it. And so then my parents, there was a negotiation between my mom and my dad and I, and we finally got everybody on board, and I signed my contract with the Marine Corps. And about, that was in May of '85. I shipped July 22nd, and probably within 6 or 8 weeks of that, whatever time it was when they split us off and you had to do duty at the chow hall, and we were doing our duty there, and I had no idea what I was in for when I got there. And so the first time I really got an opportunity to write home is I was cutting pieces of cardboard off of boxes. I was the garbage private at MCRD San Diego. I was in charge of like 3 other guys, and all we did was sling garbage. And I had stamps in my pocket, and I would cut corners off of boxes, and I'd draw these rudimentary maps to my mom. You are here, Klamath Falls. And there'd be a squiggly line down in San Diego. I am here. Get me the hell out of here. Call the governor, call a senator, just get me gone. So that's how I joined. That was my joining of the Marine Corps experience, and I'm thankful that I did it. It was truly one of the most life-changing decisions that I made, and with the help of my family.
So you mentioned your mom. How did she feel about you joining the Marine Corps?
Once I wanted to get out of there, she told me that she wasn't going to help me, but I'm sure that she,
And by the way, Spencer's mom is sitting right up there, second row.
Yeah. I don't think anybody was thrilled. I think that there was I think that people thought it was going to be good for me. I think everybody, including myself, were scared. I think that, it was an element of the unknown. I had a lot of support from my grandfather, who at that time was the only person who had a whole lot of military experience. I had one great uncle that had visited us once or twice that had been in the military during World War II, but I think there was a lot of trepidation, and just had to face it. Once the paper was signed, I thought, well, if I run, they're going to come get me anyway, so I got to go.
Wayne, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, yeah. I just thought of another really pressing reason why I was a believer. Uh, when I was in elementary school, my dad was transferred to Incirlik Air Force Base in Adana, outside of Adana, Turkey. And I remember, I think it was in the 5th grade, and the air raid sirens went off. There were Russian jets that had invaded our airspace, and we were afraid that they were going to bomb us. Here I am, 5th grader in school, and the teacher's telling us to get under the desk. Like that's going to save you from a bomb, right? But that really, I grew up like Spencer, watching G.I. Joe and what have you, and seeing my dad. I used to shine his boots and watching him go at night to go to work and work on the jets, and he was the G.I. Joe to me.
Yeah.
And then having that event where we were concerned we were going to be bombed, I became a real believer in the power of the military, because we were able, the F4s flew off and made them turn around. And so, yeah, it's like I was just born into it.
Excellent.
When you were speaking of GI Joes, when I was a little girl, my Barbies didn't want to marry Ken. They wanted to marry the Marine Corps GI Joe because he had a big tattoo on his chest. And here I am, Mom. You should have stopped me.
It was all about the tattoos. Is that what you're saying?
I can't figure it out.
Thank you. All right. So my story, you're looking at a guy that never had any plans of serving in the military at all. My life up through high school and then the early part of college, everything was all about me. And so I didn't have an understanding of caring or loving for others beyond what I could maybe get out of that event or relationship. Had a couple of good friends that were Marine reservists on the campus where I was going to college. This was in 1982, 83 timeframe. And they always impressed me. I never took note of military people until I met these two friends. And these two individuals, they really attracted me to them. But what I really liked about them is the way they carried themselves and the love they had for the organization that they were a part of. I'd never known anybody that loved what they were and what they belonged to like these two guys. Brian Notter was the name of one of them, and Chris Seymour, or otherwise known as Zamo, as we called him, was the other. Well, one afternoon I sat down with Brian. We were eating lunch together in between classes, and I started asking Brian about, well, why is the Marine Corps so important to you, and what are the things that cause you want to be a Marine? And this short conversation turned into an hour and a half. And as he spoke, he shared with me about the hardships and the challenges and the sacrifices that service people experience and that Marines experience. And he mentioned to me about the motto of the Marine Corps, which is Semper Fidelis. And I go, and it sounded really cool. I didn't know what it meant. I go, is that Greek? And he goes, well, you're pretty close. It's Latin, and it means always faithful. And when he said that, these chills went down my spine. And he was telling me about this officer candidate program that he was involved in. He was already a corporal in the Marine Corps, going to college. He's going to become an officer, and what it meant to him to accept the responsibility and the burdens of being a leader of Marines. And as he was talking, I didn't know that I wanted all these things, but in that hour and a half conversation, I realized that my life was not going to be worthwhile if I didn't have the ability to learn how to serve others. And I wanted to do that. So I decided right at that moment that I wanted to try to become a Marine officer. And he was sharing with me about these other programs. Marines fly aircraft, and I always loved aviation as a kid. I was building rockets and model airplanes and blowing them up and making them fly. And I never had a vision of how you go from, who I was to these people that do crazy, wild things that I could have never dreamed of. So he shared with me that, these opportunities that were there. So, and he goes, hey, and the selection officer is on the campus today. You should go talk to him. And I said, I'm going to go do that. So I skipped all the rest of the classes for the day, went to the Student Union building, and walked in one side of the building. And then there on the other side, about 75 feet away on the complete other side, was this Marine officer that had his red table set up, advertising, Marine options. and this, oh, I won't say short, but he's probably like 5'8", literally barrel-chested Marine with a high and tight, like maybe some of those guys up there have. And he was looking in disdain over the entire student population in the student union building. And I was completely intimidated because I'd never been around people in the military before. I'd only seen them in movies. And this guy was worse than the guys I saw in movies. And so our eyes locked when I walked in, and I was like, okay, I cannot stop looking at him because I don't want to lose the challenge. So I walked across the student union building, down the steps, and then across the lower part, and then back up. And then as I'm approaching, I'm sticking my hand out. I have not stopped looking at him, and he has not stopped staring at me. And he grabbed my hand. And of course, I should have been ready for the handshake competition, because that's what it became for about 11 or 15 seconds. Literally, we were standing there, and I realized, just like my uncle used to do, he's trying to win and make me go, do this, and I wasn't going to let him do that. So finally, after 15 seconds, and my hands are longer than his, I finally got the advantage, and he goes, "Oh, that's a damn good handshake there. Well, what do you want?" And I said, my name's, Eric Levesque, and I'm interested in becoming an officer in the Marine Corps. And of course, he asked me the question I'm not ready for. Well, what the hell can you do for my Corps? And I didn't know. I just said, well, I want to serve, and I'd like to do hard things with Marines and lead Marines. Anyways, that was the start of my process of becoming a Marine officer. Went through several summers of officer candidate school. Amazingly, by the grace of God, completed that, and then was on my way to what's called the basic school, and the story continued. So with that, I'd like to start with you, Wayne. What was your experience once you got into the Army? What was it that you did? And then again, what was the experience that stands out most to you? Not an event, but just what it meant to be a soldier in the Army.
Well, when I served, it was a time of the Cold War, relative peace. We got packed up, ready to go 3 times, told to update our wills and call our loved ones and say goodbye. But when we got packed on the plane, packed on the train, but we ended up not going.
Where were you stationed at the time?
I went to basic training, combat engineer school, where you learn to blow up stuff and disarm booby traps and bombs, and then studied as an electrician, because that's what Mom suggested I do.
Very smart.
And that was all at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And then I got stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, which I'd already been overseas as a child, and had a sister live down in Houston. So, I got to go down and visit her and party in Houston and just have a good old time. It was a bit wilder and crazier than I am now. Well, wilder anyhow. But yeah, so just absolutely loved down in Texas. Had a great time. Probably the most memorable thing was that combat engineer training. Blowing stuff up was so cool.
And getting paid to do it.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Take a day job doing that anytime. But anyhow, yeah, a lot of adventures and things I don't talk about in public, don't want recorded. But yeah, it was interesting.
Would you say you enjoyed your time in the Army?
Part of it, I did. I was the golden boy for some time when I first went in. In fact, they had me up for, I was an E3, and they had me up for E4 6 months early. But right before I was awarded the E4, we got a new platoon sergeant, and we were out in the field, where you're camping out and playing soldier, and they had us building a timber trestle bridge. These timbers are big. I mean, yeah. The bridge is designed so that tanks can go over the top of them. Unfortunately, we went from this wonderful platoon sergeant who just retired, the one that put me up for E4 early, to a new guy that was out of supply. Didn't know what the heck he was doing. And these timbers, they're 20 feet long and weigh a whole ton. And we're doing this overnight and in dangerous situation. And he didn't know what he was doing. And I was afraid somebody was going to get hurt very badly or killed. And it was the following day. We're still working on this bridge. And at that time, they had me driving truck, and I was going to go get supplies. I was going to go get lunch, I think it was. And just very frustrated, very tired, very scared somebody's going to get wiped out. And as I'm driving away, the window was down, and I let off, I don't know what you would call it, was, that's what we did, you know. Uh, and he turned around, saw me, and when we got out of the field, I got called into the commanding officer's office and was given an Article 15, and they busted me down from an E3, almost E4, to an E1. So, yeah, from that point forward, I wasn't real happy with my time in the Army. I was planning on retiring, but that didn't happen.
It was time to become an electrician.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to skip past you right now, Sarah, and go to Spencer. What was your time in the service like, and maybe help us understand what your experience was, and maybe there's some defining moments that help with that.
Well, there's 32, almost 33 years of experience, sir. But I think that for me, I got out once, and so what I found what I got out of all of my military service was that I was part of something greater. Obviously, you're serving your country. And I'm kind of prone to that. I enjoy that feeling. What I also felt being in the military all those years is there's a sense of security. Part of it is fun, like you're in a fraternity. You party with the guys, you make great friends, lifelong friends. You go to work every day. It's almost like high school. You know everybody. You know who you're going to party with tonight. You know where you're going to go tomorrow. And they're paying you for that. And you're insured. You got medical. You got dental. You've got free clothes. Unless you're in the Marine Corps, you got to buy your clothes. But it just, for me, the whole. And I'm not saying that it wasn't difficult. And everybody in this building knows that military service is difficult. Whether you've been married to one or have a son or a daughter, or you've served alongside each other, whatever. I mean, there are hardships. There's no consolation for being out in the middle of nowhere in sub-zero weather, freezing your butt off, and thinking, God, I'm so glad I did this for the college money. It doesn't work that way. So if you talk about the whole experience, for me, I felt like I belonged to it, and there was so many good people in it. I never felt like I was legitimate. I mean, even when I was a command sergeant major, I always felt there was other guys and gals that could do so much better than me, and it kept me striving for more, and it brought out the best person in me. And the honest answer is I really didn't realize that 100% until I got out. And then once I got out, there was this vacuum, and so looking back, what I got out of it the whole time was it was my family. Everywhere I went, I had a ready-made family. I had people there to help me, to work with me, to work for me, and it, for me, that worked. And it worked a hell of a lot better than those short periods of time where I wasn't in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I owe Uncle Sugar a great deal. I mean, I am who I am today, and I have no idea what Spencer Martin out of uniform looks like minus the last 4 years.
How many years again? 32?
32 and change, sir.
Just a few. 3 decades.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Outstanding. All right, Sarah. What was describe to us your experience and time in the Marine Corps?
Well, I was going to say my day job was blowing stuff up. So, no, so I was ordnance. I built really big weapon systems that made big towns into nothing. Most of my time was at Cherry Point. I kind of bounced around all over the Eastern Seaboard.
And what's Cherry Point for those that may not know?
It's the less loved version of Marine Corps bases in North Carolina. Lejeune is where all the cool guys are that are ground side. And then Cherry Point is the Air Wing base.
Yep, Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point.
MCAS. For me, we always were told about the brotherhood and about, you would say Semper Fi, always faithful and call each other brothers, but I think I definitely truly learned the meaning of that while I was in. I was injured when I was in the field, and I went back to working with ordnance. Apparently, if you work with really deadly chemicals with open wounds, it can be really deadly.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew? Not the Marine Corps. No. So I ended up getting really sick, and I was checking into a new duty station. I only got about halfway through with checking in, and I had collapsed. I ended up in the hospital, unconscious, in and out, for a month and a half. So my gunny, which was, supposed to be my boss, that I hadn't even met yet, he came in, because he heard about this Marine that came in, didn't even meet him yet, didn't even get done checking in, and was now in the hospital. While I was in the hospital, they tried to medically separate me, with a 10% severance pay, which means here's $1,500, forget the Marine Corps ever happened. And my gunny came in and saw my injuries and saw what the medical records stated, and they did not add up. So he got together with a few of the other Marines that I was supposed to be serving with, and out of their own pocket, they paid for an attorney that helped me fight to stay in the Marine Corps. They paid for a civilian doctor, which I found out that initially, if I would not have gotten medical attention right away, they told me I had less than 6 months to live. That's how bad it was. So you hear these things, that there's a brotherhood, but you don't truly understand unless you're there, unless you're involved in it. And a lot of people will ask me with what happened and how you got injured, how can you still be working in uniform in the color guard or honor guard, or how can you still be a part of it, and how can you love the Marine Corps so much after what happened? Because when I got out, I did have to go through 10 and a half years of chemo, 17 surgeries right away. I was in a wheelchair. I went through it. And I always say there was one bad person that is the reason I acquired my injuries in the field. There's bad people everywhere. The difference was the Marines saved my life. They didn't know my name. They had no idea who I was. They had never met me before. They had no ties to me. And it didn't matter. All that mattered was I was another Marine. I was their brother. I know I'm a girl. We earned our manhood. Deal with it. No, and they spent their entire paychecks keeping me alive when I was too unconscious to even know what was going on. And that's not something you find in the civilian world in everyday life. People don't just see somebody that needs help and just spend months of their paycheck and, can't pay their electrical bill because they're getting you a doctor or an attorney or anything like that. Like Marines are different. You know, that one person may have hurt me, but my Marines in the Marine Corps saved my life. And they're the only reason I have anything today, the only reason I am still here. And I think that's why, I will continue to do things like work the Honor Guard or work with the Marine Corps League, is because I wouldn't have made it without them. And, I need to use the rest of my life paying them back for the life they gave me. And so when they say there's a brotherhood and when they say we're always faithful, I'm still doing this. And, I joined 23 years ago and I'll be in uniform at a sunrise service tomorrow morning. I'm 41 and I've been doing this 23 years out of the 41 years of my life. And we do not mess around with that always faithful thing. We do not mess around with the brotherhood. It is a family that I wish everyone could understand and experience. And I wouldn't be here without them.
Powerful. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. That's a powerful story. I spent 21 short years, not quite 32, like my buddy here next to me. During my time in the Marine Corps, I got married. I never planned on being married. I had 7 children, never planned on having any kids, and got the opportunity to lead thousands of Marines and serve with thousands of Marines and be led by some incredible people. And like Spencer mentioned, I always felt a little, well, he didn't say less than, but I always felt less than. Like I would see these incredible, they seemed superhuman. So many of the Marines that I worked around, whether they were my peers, my superiors, and most often the Marines that were junior to me, and I would go, these guys are superhuman. Who am I to be included amongst this great cloud of witnesses? And it was always a humbling experience, and it seemed like the Marine Corps would just keep giving me more and more responsibility over more people, and the burden, which was a good burden, would get heavier and heavier because there was such a need to make sure that these Marines were well trained, well provided for, so that they could go out and accomplish the mission that I was going to ask them to go do. And usually it meant putting their lives on the line or somebody else's life on the line if they didn't succeed in their mission. But I am so thankful for those opportunities that I was continually given. And there was lots of, high mountaintop experiences of this is great, this is fun, this is incredible. And there was plenty of low valley, near death, very frightening, or worse, frightened for the very Marines that I sent out to go do things, and me not being there, I've tasked them to go do something, and it's like I did send them out to go die. And but I'm thankful for all of those things because, like Sarah, you mentioned, it was a real family that I was operating within. Even though we were hard on each other, and we needed to be because that's the nature of war, we were truly a family in every command that I was in. And it was very unique. And I flew F-18s and did a lot of fun, exciting, dynamic things. And often when I meet folks that maybe don't know me, they'll go, "Oh, do you really miss the flying and you miss all that excitement?" And yes, I do, but that's not what I miss most about having spent time in the military. I miss the people that I got to work with. And I miss the knowledge that, one, I was there to back them up 110% and that they were going to be doing the reciprocal for me. I knew that, and I had complete faith and trust in those individuals that I got to serve with. So many times, whether it was a peer or a senior or a junior, either they quite literally saved my life, or saved, a bad situation and made it an outstanding situation. And that is a unique experience to have in life, and I'm thankful that I had that. I would love for everybody to get to share that type of experience and to have that knowledge of the trust, the confidence the deep love that you have for one another. I mean, no greater love does a man have than this, than to give his life for his friend. And I knew that that was the case. And that would have been the case if I got to serve with any of these other people up here with me. So that was my brief experience. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'd like to have you start thinking about maybe some questions that you'd like to ask, or maybe even a comment of an experience that kind of reflects with what's been said up here. I know there's some other service members up here. It would be great to hear from you. So after we're done answering this next question, I really want to encourage you. We have a microphone right down here and a microphone right over there. We would love to hear any questions you might like to pose, or maybe share a brief experience that we've maybe triggered that would be valuable for all of us to hear. All right, so be thinking about that. So, Spencer, I want to start with you. Since you've been now off of active duty and active service, what has life been like as a member of Klamath Falls, and what's the experience of the Klamath area been for you as far as supporting or not supporting, or being just a benefit to you as a former active service member?
Well, I would say that, especially in Klamath Falls, you know, being a veteran is so far has been a very positive experience. You know, I think that when we look at what's going on nationally, all of the things that can divide us, I think, and Court and I were talking about it the other day. You know, I think that one of the things that brings a majority of Americans together, almost all Americans together, is their love and concern for their veterans, no matter what side of whatever spectrum you're falling on. I think that veterans advocacy and supporting veterans transcends everything else. And so I'm a beneficiary of that. I have not had a negative experience. Klamath County, as Court alluded to earlier today, you know, is per capita one of the largest populations of veterans in the state of Oregon. We have great systems in place. We have the CBOC here in town up by OIT. We got the Veteran Service Office over there by the Health Department. And if it's resources you're looking for, you will find them in Klamath County. You know, you will determine your eligibility. They will get you to where you need to go. And you know, I grew up at a time in the military where the VA was struggling to bridge gaps between how Vietnam veterans were cared for, and then into Desert Storm, and then on into enduring freedom and Iraqi freedom. And again, I rode on the backs of those poor guys that got terrible service and were brave enough to speak out about PTSD, Agent Orange, or whatever, and exponentially, even before 9/11, exponentially improved the VA system, and communities like Klamath Falls recognizing the need to care for veterans, expanding municipal level services to veterans. So sum it all up, I've had a very, very positive experience. I'll tell you right now, I've got 3 doctors working on my head. I got 2 doctors working on my body. I've got a nutritionist, a dietitian, and I got a pharmacist. And so
That's all through the VA process.
that's all through the VA process,
awesome.
man. Yeah. So plus I got all my brothers and sisters at the Marine Corps League and at the VFW and the American Legion. If I am not without resources, to say the least, sir.
Yep. Amen to that. Sarah, same thing to you. What are your thoughts on that? Living in Klamath Falls as a veteran.
Well, I came from California, so things were
You came from where?
California. California.
That's our Sarah.
Sorry, not sorry. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went back to California, and it was basically, you are on your own. Good luck. Like that's it. Luckily I was smart enough to leave a very, very long time ago. Not that smart, but smart enough to leave. And coming here was definitely culture shock. I did not have a single friend or family member here, and so I found out that there was a Marine Corps club and a Marine Corps bar, and so that was my first job here. those were my first friends here. Those poor people are still having mental health problems from dealing with me for 17 years, but but, but it was, you go from an area where, so what? You're not special, like nobody cares. And then you come to an area where it's like this county literally makes up excuses to have military parades. And I am here for it 100%. Um, you know, when I was sick, it took me 7 years of chemotherapy to be able to get put on 100% disabled vet status. I come here and there's 10 organizations going, okay, what do you need? Like, we will help you today. And, completely different experience. And one of my favorite things that we have here that they don't have in other areas are things like, the Veterans Advisory Board, where every single military club and government entity that deals with military or veterans, they get together once a month. And when we have veterans or their families in crisis, we meet as a team to try and see how we can help them. Some people can help push paperwork, some people can help pay their electrical bills. So, and everybody, you have all these different groups that work as a team because we've all been in a position where we needed help and it wasn't there for us. And so now we have all of these volunteers that are working overtime to help in any way they can because they don't want anyone to go through what we did. They don't want anyone to feel alone like we did. Our biggest problem, though, is not, we have a lot of resources in this area. We don't have a lot of marketing personnel. And so there are veterans in need, and we have these services, and we can help them. They just don't know we exist. And I feel like everyone that I have, well, not, obviously everyone, but a lot of the people that I have found in this area that were, unhappy with their military experience, like obviously Klamath County does not control the VA. Sorry, we're trying, but they're really pushy. But, people that are not having a good experience are usually, because they don't realize that there is so much help and so many people that care that are there for them. And if we can find a way of, letting everyone know that these people and these services exist, we can get a lot better experience out there.
Thank you much. Wayne, over to you.
Well, I'm one of the people that are just finding out about all these resources. When I was a small child, my dad was in the Air Force, and I remember watching on TV that there were people that coming back from war in Vietnam, and they were being spat on and called baby killers. And my dad wasn't a big fan of the hippies doing that, and neither was I. When I got out, well, today when people get out, they're often celebrated for their service. But when I got out, it was just ignored. Heck, I just finally, a couple of years ago, applied for disability and was granted disability through the VA, but it was through the Disabled American Veterans, because I tried calling the gal with Klamath County and wasn't getting anywhere. Went to the DAV, Disabled American Veterans building, and was helped right away. And, they were very good people. But I didn't know there were other resources if you're not a combat vet. We're going to have to talk in a little bit.
If it makes you feel any better, when I got out of the Marine Corps, the only thing I had on my resume is that I could blow stuff up, and I got out around 9/11. It's probably why they didn't welcome me with open arms into the civilian community.
But I wasn't aware there's so many resources. I think I'm glad to be here today to hear about it and find out more.
Excellent. And thank you, Court, for wanting to put this together.
Yes.
This is terrific.
Wherever he's hiding, thank you.
Yeah. I retired in 2007 and moved my family out to this area. Didn't know anybody here. We actually had a place down just south of here in the Doris McDowell area, but Klamath Falls was, where we did a lot of our activities. So um, it was immediately evident to me that this town was full of patriotic, United States loving, um, good people. And I was not aware that per capita we have one of the highest rates of veterans residing here. But that makes total sense to me because instantly I felt kind of like, oh, I'm kind of home again. Because everywhere I was going, I was meeting people that had served or were serving, and young men and women that were wanting to serve. And so my experience in the basin here post-military has just been outstanding. I love it here. My wife and I are so thankful that we live here in this very particular place, and at this particular time in our nation. And Spencer mentioned, the fact that there's a lot of division out there, but there seems to be so much unity here. Maybe because there's unity of thought, but there's also folks that just care about others, which is something that I had to learn to do in my time in the Marine Corps. And I get the opportunity to do that often. I've had now 7 kids. They're all grown up. One has been a Marine, and now she's out. And another one's going to become a Marine. Another one is in the Army right now, becoming a Army combat medic. And all the others very much respect those that are doing that, my other kids, and are all in some way serving other people too. Go ahead, Wayne.
Interestingly enough, you and I have been on a film shoot together. We had 4 of the branches of the military represented.
Yeah, we did. Air Force, Army, and the Navy.
Yeah, everything but the Coast Guard
Marines.
and the Space Force.
Yeah. So we're so fortunate to be able to live here. I mean, you look at this great hall that we're in right now. How many smaller towns have a facility like this? I was just asking Spence, what is his experience here? And he grew up watching movies here, saw Star Wars here. So I can't think of a better place to be than this place right now. I feel so blessed. So that's my response to that question. And I would like to open up those mics now to any of you that may have some comments or some questions. So here's the hard part for us as a panel to answer those questions.
I'll try and watch my mouth.
So please feel free. I know Matt has some questions. And if you could, when you come down, please just let us know who you are. And maybe if you've served in the military, let us know what capacity.
Hi, my name is Matt Baldwell. I have briefly served in the military.
And which branch?
I served in the Marine Corps and in the Army National Guard.
Excellent.
And my story of why I joined boot camp is totally not your stories at all. I was going to Disneyland and got lost. Ended up at a whole different amusement park. But
and can all of you hear Matt okay right now? Is that mic up loud enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So my question really is forward-looking in that what I would like to know is what the panel perceives as the future of veteran services in Klamath County. Where do you see our needs? And where perhaps do you see those services driving towards?
Would anybody like to answer that one?
I'm going to bring up the one need that is always at the top of my list that we do not have, and we hardly have it anywhere in the nation. We do have a lot of help for homeless veterans. We have the Veterans Enrichment Center, which is an amazing place that does transitional veteran housing. One problem we have is that we don't have that for women. We do not have transitional housing for women. If there are female veterans on the street, they're stuck there. And there's a lot of reasons for that. When you have transitional housing units, you do have to keep people separated. Normally, you cannot have co-ed facilities because some of the women may have had experience with MST or military sexual trauma. They may have PTSD, and it may not do well with, if they see a guy walking by the room in the middle of the night. It's, some people just keep them separated. Thanks, offspring. So I understand that there's also, you know, a lot of times when you have homeless male veterans, they're on their own, and a good portion of the time, female veterans do come with children. So it doesn't make it, it makes it a much more difficult situation for housing. But that is one thing that I would really love to see in the future, is to try and, make a space to try and help take care of women. They serve too. They go to war too. They're dealing with PTSD and addiction and, homelessness. Their medical issues. They're dealing with all of the same things that the men are. Yes, there's a lot less of us, but I really wish they had that same amount of opportunities available for them. But I know that Tammy, the woman that is running the Veterans Enrichment Center, is, you know, she's female Army, and she is in that same mindset where, you know, we are trying to do everything we can to try and make more services available for not just female veterans, but for all veterans. And so, I definitely hope to see that in the future. I know our big joke is if we win the lottery, that's the first thing we're doing. And, but, I really do hope to see an expanse of that in the future. And I am noticing that there are a lot of different organizations and people coming around that do want to help. Um, you know, our problem is, a lot of these clubs and organizations do, you see definite age gaps. You've got, it goes from Vietnam to Gulf War and 9/11. There's no real in between. Well, I mean, there is, but as far as participation in military groups, because there's not, foreign wars to be a part of at that time. And so we do need to start attracting a younger crowd. Um, we are trying to evolve and get more on social media and try and, appeal to younger veterans just getting out now, because we we are going to need that younger blood to take over. We're getting old. Like our knees hurt. No, and so I definitely hope to see that evolve and get more help in the future. And we have to get the word out more, and the more that people know that these services are available or know what they can do to help, the more they will participate and help us grow and get better.
So where would we find this information as far as the services that are available?
Um, Basically, all of the different clubs and groups know about each other. So, like, if you go to the DAV, they're going to tell you, that there is and disabled American veterans, that they know about the Veterans Service Office and the Veteran Enrichment Center and the Marine Corps League and the VFW and the American Legion. We all know about the different groups that can help. So honestly, if you just stumble into one, you'll figure out about the rest. But you have to, you have to know what you have to ask.
Yeah, I don't know if it still applies or not, but at one point or in the past, to be part of the VFW or the other groups, these local organizations, you had to be a combat veteran. And again, we got packed up, but the advanced forces got things taken care of before we ever got flying or what have you.
So there are ways around that. Disabled American veterans, you know, people that are disabled vets, veterans of foreign wars. So I am not a combat vet. I was never that cool. I was in a hangar working on planes. But if people are unaware of what they qualify for, so when everybody gets out, they get a DD 214. It tells you what you did.
Mhm.
If there are awards that go to your unit or things your unit was involved in while you were getting out, you can actually go and get what's called a DD 215. And that will give you your unit citations, unit awards, things that weren't completed yet while you were transitioning out. And so people that may not technically be a combat vet, well, there's no technical or not. You weren't a combat, like I'm not a combat vet. I'm not even trying to, but my unit was involved in Kosovo. And so technically that's a foreign war. I'm never going to claim that because I never left the safety of a hangar and I feel like it's a participation trophy, but you can go and get more information. You are not limited to what you were told when you got out. You know, a lot of things were happening in the middle of people transitioning out. And so try and ask about a DD 215, and that will give you more access to different clubs. But whether you are a combat vet or not, you're still a veteran.
Yeah, to sum it up, Wayne, there's very few services and provisions made for veterans that necessitate that you have to have served in combat. There's just very few of those. So that's the simple answer to that. It's just a matter of just going and finding out if there's a need that you have. These service organizations actually can provide quite a bit. Like you mentioned, Sarah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just wanting to get back to what Matt was asking because he and I had a conversation about this a while back, and so looking forward towards veteran services, what do we need to be kind of predicting maybe? You know, we just closed out of 20 years of deployments, millions of guys, you know, unprecedented since World War II.
Yeah.
And involving an exponential number of reserve component military members. And so, you know, what that translates to, Matt, is the wave is coming again. You know, we've just, you know, no offense to anybody in here who's a World War II veteran, that's closed out. No offense to anybody who's a Vietnam veteran in here, that's closing out. The wave is coming with this 20 years worth of people that have been deployed all over the globe. And we as communities and the Veterans Administration have to be prepared for that. And one thing that we talked about that's a nuance to that is that inordinate number of reserve component service members localizes a lot of those needs in clusters by unit. When you look at the Klamath Falls Army National Guard unit, for instance, you're talking about 6 or 7 deployments since 9/11.
Wow.
You know, and so you're talking about, say, 100, or a lot of those guys a lot of the same guys were on each deployment, but you might be talking about 100 locals that are going to be in that need cluster, that reserve component need cluster, not to mention the active duty folks that were from here, that came back here, or that moved here. So there's got to be, you know, if I was going to be talking to a panel of experts, I would say there's got to be some kind of anticipation of that and some serious numbers crunching to avoid what we ran into with other, you know, historically with large groups of veterans in need. So that would be my semi-short answer to your question, sir.
And right now they are putting in more housing for veterans, and they have hired on, you know, more staff at a lot of these different organizations because, you know, there is a flood of people coming in. And so, you know, there are homes being built. There are people getting hired to do, you know, more of the paperwork and everything. But it's again that thing of, you know, they just need to know what they qualify for. And like I said, if you have questions, go get your DD 214 and look at that, or your DD 215. Every single one of these organizations, Marine Corps League, our members are Marines, but we have associate members that are different, all the different branches, or, you know, spouses, parents, children of. You're still associated. You know, I don't belong to the VFW, but I still work out of there on their color guard and honor guard. You can belong to any of these groups as an associate member as well. Please don't ever feel like, you know, you're not cool enough to get in there, because you are. You did your time, you're a veteran, and you are capable of getting all of these services.
Thanks, Sarah. Any other questions or thoughts out there? Got a microphone, now's your chance. I see Bowen. Come on up, Bowen.
I'll make it quick. That way we can move on also, just to make sure that I don't talk everyone's ear off. But since this is a Klamath Film event, and then, by the way, my name is Bowen Browder. I am a volunteer. I'm also a member of Klamath Film. I'm actually helping put on this event as well. I'm not a veteran, but I know plenty of them, and I'm friends with plenty of them as well. Since this is sort of a Klamath Film associated thing, I did have a question on how do you guys feel about the portrayal of service members in film and TV, and if you had to change anything, what would you change about media perception, the way that TV and films about military service or veterans is being portrayed? How you guys feel about that, and what would you change if you could change anything?
Good question.
Can I just get someone's rank and ribbons to line up with their age and their branch, please? Anyone that's a veteran has watched a TV show and is like, there's no way that's a 22-year-old sergeant major with no ribbons. I'm going to freaking stab people. Like, just come on. Get some military people to advise and get your shit together.
And I think Spence wanted to answer that too. Go ahead.
Sarah said it all.
Sarah usually does.
Pay the money for a good military advisor, or at least get a good one that'll volunteer for you, because they get it bad all the time.
Well, we did have one outstanding military advisor that became a great movie star himself, and that was Lee Ermey.
Yep, R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah. Great portrayal.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any favorite military or service-oriented films, TV, or even characters, or
that's a great question.
In general?
That is great. Wayne, you got a favorite one, maybe two at the most?
Nothing comes to mind. I've seen a lot of military movies that I've enjoyed.
Okay.
Full Metal Jacket, was great. It not only do we have Lee Ermey who was I think he was a drill sergeant when he was in the military.
Drill instructor for Marines.
Oh, drill instructor. Okay.
Just joking.
But then you had that crazy dude too, and it's like you were saying earlier that you got bad apples in every bunch, and I think you were saying, Eric, that there were people that joined the Marines that wanted to kill, or somebody was telling me that just recently. And you try and wash them out, when you find out you got some wackos in here.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I said that.
No, there are people that are denied because of psych evals.
Yeah.
100%. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but
what's your favorite portrayal?
Movies and TV are one thing, but Band of Brothers, because they had the actual veterans, the actual World War II vets that did the intros and exits, and I cannot watch an old man break down and cry that is a combat vet. It makes me lose it every time. But there is something about when they do the intro and exit with the actual veterans that were there.
Yep.
So that one I love, because not only did they advise, but they were included in it, and just they're what they said about the people they served with, and there was that one where he said his grandson asked him if he was a hero.
Mm.
No, the heroes didn't come home.
Yeah, powerful.
I'm sorry, I don't care. I can act tough all day, but I will cry like a little girl if I see a combat vet break down.
All right, Spencer, you got a favorite portrayal?
Well, I got equal ones. So I love Full Metal Jacket, but Gary Cooper and Sergeant York, Audie Murphy and To Hell and Back, Robert Duvall and The Great Santini.
Oh yeah.
And I love Tom Berenger in Platoon.
Yeah.
Yep. Just recently, a movie came out called Midway, and it wasn't one particular portrayal there, but I really appreciate the reality that they displayed when they're attacking the ships, and there's vertical dive bombs, and the AAA, the anti-aircraft artillery, is coming up. They truly captured the essence of what that is like, because I got to experience that, and I was just amazed at how well they finally captured that visual of what it was like for pilots to be basically diving into the jaws of death and seeing the big sky, little bullet theory go out the window because the sky is just full of rounds of artillery coming up at them. So I really appreciated the effort they put into capturing that, and I love the examples you just gave too, Spence. So with that, I think it's time to turn it back over to Court, and we appreciate you having the patience to sit through all of this, and I'll give it back to you, Court, okay?
Okay, I want to thank everybody. Um, a few quick things before we get to the movie. First, I got to specifically thank the Marine Corps League because they have been super helpful with everything. I could not have gotten this show up without it. Second, I want to thank Wayne, and I want to thank our chairman, Kurt, for letting me get away with this stuff. And very briefly, I want to tell you about the Veterans Enrichment Center, which provides transitional housing for veterans and just basically aids veterans in distress. They're doing great work. Out in the lobby, there are flyers for the June stand down, and they need your help. They need your contributions, whether it's food, clothing, anything that you're recycling or throwing out. Yeah, all of those things, and it's really a valuable thing that we as a community can do together to help. That being said, I think we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll start the film.
All right, thanks, Court.
Thank
Thank you.